and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sara.
And today we'll be discussing The Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett.
I don't think there's a
Thief of Time?
It's just Thief of Time, yeah.
Okay.
There's no article in front of it.
We will be discussing Non-Determined Thief of Time by Terry Pratchett. But first, Sara, what's something great that happened recently?
Well, for once, the question is not, did something good happen that I can use for this question? The question is how to choose from all of the good things that have happened recently. I'm going to cheat a little bit and say two, because one of them is not really my good thing. And that is that my mother submitted a poem to an anthology and got it accepted. So,
wonderful.
I'm not supposed to talk about it because they specifically say, don't talk about it on social media. But I figure if I don't say anything specific about it, it doesn't count. So, yeah, she's going to be appearing in an anthology published at some point, which is very exciting. I'm very pleased for her.
Yay, that's wonderful.
So that's good thing number one. Good thing number two was that I went backpacking with my father. It was a short trip. We just did one night, and it went a lot better than our backpacking trip in July.
That was weather related, though, wasn't it, for the most part?
Well, that was partially very soggy ground because it was an unusually high snow year in the Sierra this year. But also, Dad just had a really hard time, with the hike. I mean, in his defense, he is 73, so it's kind of understandable that he has a hard time with backpacking. But he was a much stronger hiker this time, which was nice, just because it meant that I think that we can go backpacking again next year. And last time I was worried that maybe this was the end of it.
Yeah, lasts are always no fun, huh?
So those are my good things.
My good thing, I'm going to say that I took a nap today, which is also my way of getting around the fact that I've had lots of very good things, and instead of trying to pick one, the result is that I'm very tired. And so I had to take a nap, but it was a good nap, and I am technically awake now.
You are technically awake. It would be interesting to record an episode while you're sleeping. I don't think that would work very well.
I am mostly upright. My eyes are open. Let's do this.
But a nap sounds lovely.
Oh, it was wonderful. I needed it desperately. I stopped playing Baldur's Gate to take it. That's how badly I needed it.
That's a pretty strong statement.
I know. What are you drinking tonight?
I decided that I was going to open up a bottle of Bloody Mary mix that I have and make myself a Bloody Mary.
Delightful.
Yeah. I have homemade dill pickles as garnish.
Yum. I love pickles.
And I'm quite pleased.
I am drinking ice water in an attempt to stay awake.
Probably a good plan.
Yes. Ooh, I actually have read something good lately that's not podcast related.
Oh, what have you read?
I've been on a Clive Barker kick. I finished The Scarlet Gospel and I started Cabal. Both of those are by Barker.
Nice.
The Scarlet Gospel is his second book about Pinhead, or what Hellraiser is based on. I read the first one last year. It was pretty good.
I think I vaguely remember you talking about it, actually.
Yeah. I had seen the movies for the first time, and I always think it's interesting when the same creator tells the story on two different platforms. That's not the right word. Media? In two different media?
Yeah.
And he wrote the novella and also directed the movie or wrote the movie. Something.
Was involved in the production of the movie somehow.
Yes, had decision-making power in some way. It's horror, obviously. It's pretty graphic. It's also, wildly progressive. When did it come out? I should know this. I have a lot of opinions and, half-formed opinions. No, The Scarlet Gospels came out in 2015. Really?
Oh, that's quite recent, actually. Well, relatively speaking.
Yeah. When did The Hellbound Heart come out? 86. That was the timeline I was expecting.
Yes.
The book is basically, it's not exactly the same as the movie, but if you've seen the movie, you basically know what happens in the book. This second one, though, starts off almost like Dresden Files-y. The main character is a detective who fights supernatural things. And like he and a small group of friends have to go into hell to rescue someone from Pinhead.
Do you need to have read the first book to follow along with the second one?
Not at all. The first one is like a very zoomed in personal story about like one family that accidentally summons, I guess it's not the uncle in the book, it's the boyfriend or something. I don't remember. Anyway, a Pinhead haunts this one small group of people. Whereas in this one, it's like an action adventure, like going down into hell to rescue. Yeah, you would hate it. It's very graphic. Lots of like hooks bursting through assholes and things.
I think I'd probably enjoy book 2 more than book 1.
Yes, probably.
Just from the description. But and if you wanted to read them for one of them for Spooky Month, we could do that. But I'm probably never going to read the books otherwise.
No, you're fine. And then I started reading Cabal. He's an interesting author. Yeah, anyway, I have kicked off Spooky Month early, as you can tell.
I mean, we're only a month out. That's not that early.
Yeah. How about you?
I have been reading a couple of things. I think the last thing that I picked up was The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. And I had a really hard time starting this book just because, like, the way that it plays with perspective took me a hot second to get into. But I'm about, I'd say maybe a quarter of the way through. And I finally found like my reading feet. And so I understand like when these sentences are in italic, we're getting the points of view of like dead people. And I didn't understand that when I first started reading because it's not actually explained. You just kind of pick it up. But I'm enjoying it. Took me a minute, but I'm enjoying it.
Nice. That reminds me, it took me like 4 tries to read Cloud Atlas. I would get 50 pages in and quit.
I've never tried reading it.
I remember liking it eventually.
I think Ben Whishaw was in the movie, and that's about all I know about Cloud Atlas.
I don't know who that is.
And I could be wrong. He plays Q in the latest James Bond.
Ah.
He has like 7 minutes of screen time in Skyfall. And he was, of course, my favorite character in Skyfall.
You would like Q. That makes sense.
Specifically, Ben Wishaw's Q.
So, we're not here to talk about Hellraiser or, what was it, The Spear Across the Water? That wasn't what you just said.
The Spear Cuts Through Water.
All right. I got half the words right.
You got most of it. And we're not here to talk about James Bond either. It would be an interesting book to read for the podcast.
Yeah.
One of the Bond books.
But we haven't yet. Nay, today we have read Thief of Time, by Terry Pratchett.
I gotta say, it's not my favorite Discworld book.
Yeah, and I went into it expecting to like it. I'd say in the first like 20 to 50 pages, I was like rubbing my hands together, like, oh yeah, this is gonna be great. I've seen Susan. This is gonna be a book that I love. And then it just like never really came together for me.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about Susan in this book, but I'm gonna save them for the spoiler section. I think one of the things I do like about this book is that, not that we really needed it, but it does provide a canonical reason for why the timeline of Discworld is kind of a hot mess.
Yeah, because time got all goofed up and restitched together.
Yeah, and I love that Pratchett was like, I know that my timeline doesn't make sense, so I'm just gonna go with it. Here's the reason why. 16 books in, or however many books in we are.
So, although this is categorized as a death book, perhaps incorrectly in my opinion, most of it actually follows Lobsang, who is an apprentice of the Time Monks, or not even an apprentice, lower down than an apprentice. No, he's an apprentice.
I think he's an apprentice, yeah.
Yeah. And we spend most of this book in that temple, like watching him listen to, oh gosh, what's his name? Luce?
Yeah, Sweeper.
The Sweeper, who is the most revered of their order, but a humble janitor. We get some funny lines about respecting janitorial staff.
I really so Sweeper is, even though he is a very valued and respected member of the history monks, as I think they're colloquially called, like when it comes to the actual monastery, he's not actually like in that hierarchy because he's a sweeper. And so he doesn't follow their belief system or their like way, quote unquote. He has his own way, and he quotes from his own like sacred book all the time. And I really like that it takes 75 pages to learn that he gets his sayings from Mrs. Cosmopolite in Ankh-Morpork.
Because he rented a room from her back in the day. And she said lots of things like, if you have time to lean, you have time to clean, etc.
Well, and, he makes a good point. Like, he's like, all of these people are going far away to learn wisdom. They're coming to this valley to learn wisdom, traveling a long way. So I'm going to travel a long way to learn wisdom. It just means that he goes to Ankh-Morpork instead of, a remote location.
Yeah. The Mrs. Cosmopolite, is that it?
Yeah.
That part was funny. That sort of ongoing gag. Luze, I didn't love.
It's quite possible that my fond feelings for him are from Night Watch.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of this book was the reader watching Lobsang listen to Luze. There's a lot of talk and not a lot really happens.
I don't mind that. I mean, that wasn't one of the issues that I had with this book.
It just felt like most of it was Luce explaining how the history monks work. And I was like, my God, how is this 90% exposition?
Yeah, I didn't have an issue with that. One of the things that I do kind of have an issue with is the way that Pratchett is trying to play with the stereotype of, like the wizened old Asian wise person, because I don't think he's particularly successful in the way that he does that in this book. Like, for example, Lutze knows a lot of different kinds of martial art types, and the names of those martial arts are all really kind of offensive. I mean, it harkens back to interesting times. Yeah.
Where he used a lot of like, oh, it's funny because they're saying a different word, but it sounds like an English word.
Yeah, there's like okie dokie and shiitake and upsy daisy and no kendo. The one I do like is deja vu, because I think that's actually a good pun.
Well, yeah, because that actually, there's actually something there. It's not just,
yeah.
It sounds like something else.
Yeah.
This wasn't as bad as Interesting Times.
No, definitely not.
That book was rough. This one, I didn't hate the history monks. There just wasn't really enough in that plot line to grip me. And unfortunately, that was the main plot line.
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate the history monks. And like I said, I didn't mind that there wasn't a lot in that plot line. But sometimes I just found that the way in which they were described was poking fun at them and not with them.
Yeah. The hierarchy stuff was pretty funny. The people highest on the totem pole don't actually have any idea how it works, how their system works or their protection of time, because they're not the ones actually doing the work, right? Mm-hmm. That was fun. But that's just any organization you can make that joke about. So it doesn't feel like shitty.
Yeah. I mean, I like the abbot. I like the concept that the monks have a way of like reincarnating or extending their life, and the abbot just hasn't figured out how to do that without actually reincarnating. Like, I think that's interesting.
He does. Does he die at the very, very beginning?
No, he's born.
He's born at the very, very beginning.
Yeah.
And he is a baby the whole time. It's very funny.
So like there's some good bits. It's just there's also some not so good bits.
Yeah. Let's see. So there's the history monks, excuse me. We also see Jeremy, who is a clockmaker and kind of becomes obsessed with making the perfect clock.
Yeah. And Jeremy, I have really mixed feelings about, in the way that, we were going to talk about Jeremy in the spoiler section.
Yeah, I was just introducing the different plot lines that were happening. We have feelings about Jeremy that are spoiler feelings.
Yeah, I forgot what our outline looked like for a minute.
Then there's also, of course, Death and Susan, who sometimes overlap and sometimes do not overlap with each other. And the Death stuff was fun, but there's like maybe a grand total of 2 pages in this entire book with Death in them. It's a little dramatic, but I'm close.
There's not actually a lot of death in this book, because what I want to say is a spoiler, because it's not mentioned on the back of the book. But for reasons, death can't show up much, even though this is supposedly a death book.
It has the same sort of setup as the Hogfather. Death is like, hey, Susan, don't go do this thing I want you to do. And she's like, ah, dang it, now I have to go do that thing. Which was delightful. And I was like, hell yeah, this is going to be another Hogfather, but this time the hijinks are going to be about time and clocks instead of Christmas. And then it really failed to live up to my expectations. I don't know. Susan is introduced in the beginning and then doesn't really come back. I was like, she's just in it so little. I think if I had approached this as Death and Susan had cameos in this book, I'd be less disappointed. But I thought this was like, this is listed as a Death book.
I didn't think that Susan showed up that infrequently, but definitely I agree with you that it's a little misleading to consider it a Death book because Susan and Death are not the one major or the two major characters.
Yeah, they are the B plot line at best.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that Susan shows up in like 45% of the book.
Oh, I disagree.
But
whatever. We don't need to figure out the exact percentage that she's on the page.
Not relevant. Either way, it's not 100%.
We got another Igor in this book, of whom continues to be delightful. Igor, it's hard to talk about Igors.
The Igor in this book is great. We learn a little bit more about the Igor family and their kind of ethos. I wanted to point out a quote that Igor has about work, because I think Igors have the right mentality when it comes to work. Igors were loyal, but they were not stupid. A job was a job. When an employer had no further use for your services, for example, because he'd just been staked through the heart by a crowd of angry villagers, it was time to move on before they decided that you ought to be on the next stake. And Igor soon learned a secret way out of any castle and where to stash an overnight bag. In the words of one of the founding Igors, we belong dead. Excuse me, where does it say we? I'm not lisping because that's just miserable for me to try to do. But my point here is that a job is a job, and a job is not a family. You know, your coworkers are not your family. You should be able to shut it off at the end of the day. And so I quite appreciated Igor's work ethic.
It is fun to see, too, because Igors are so devoted to their master and the craft, whatever craft that may be. In this case, clockmaking. And we have seen Igors betray their masters before. Oh, that sounds like he does in this book. He doesn't, but now saying that makes it a spoiler. Oh no. I've walked backwards into not spoiling something. But there's nothing to spoil. I'm making this worse.
You are just making this worse.
We've never seen an Igor's internal thought process on their own duty and how they decide, you know, what job is worth taking and what isn't.
Yeah, we get a lot of internal monologue from Igor in this book, which I appreciated.
Yeah, that part was very fun.
Yeah, could have used more of it. More Igor.
Igor and Jeremy's patron, Lady Legene, are probably my favorite parts of this book. And the fact that Susan doesn't make that list is absolute bonkers.
It is, and like I said, I have thoughts, but I can't talk about them yet.
Okay, I have only one more comment. So Susan's a teacher, right? I guess last time we saw her, she was a governess, but now she's effectively a kindergarten teacher. And we get some fun parallels, kind of implied parallels between teaching, where the people you're interacting with are always changing and there's nothing permanent because every year you get a new batch of kids, and immortality, because she is immortal and so no one is permanent and she always is dealing with a new batch of people. That's just an interesting sort of comparison. That's all. It doesn't really go into it that deeply, but I liked that. There's like one line.
It is, no, you're right. It is interesting though.
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, and I wish it was further explored. We get, like you said, just a hint of that with that one line, but not a lot. Is this the last Susan book? I think this is the last Susan book, in as much as it can be called a Susan book.
Yeah, that's really disappointing.
Yeah, because I would love to have seen that explored, like get a whole book to talk about.
She is like on the edge of two worlds and is often like trying to balance them unsuccessfully, or not trying to balance them, trying to live entirely in one world or the other.
Yeah, I don't think she's trying to balance them. I think she just wants to live on the disc.
Yeah, normal world.
Normal world.
But she can tell she doesn't totally belong.
Yeah.
She doesn't fit in quite right.
Yeah. I think she has a lot of issues to work through.
Yeah. They're sort of hinted at in the Hogfather and it's just Hogfather and just Thief of Time. I keep adding the in front of it. At least in both of these, the titles are referring to one specific person. Anyway, I don't think she really gets explored thoroughly, her character, her situation.
Certainly not in this book.
Yeah. Well, who should read this book? If you've hit this point in Discworld, and it's the next one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
There's a lot of philosophizing about the nature of time. If you're into that, that would be fun.
If you think clocks are cool and you like seeing mentions of them.
Does it? I mean, there is a very cool clock, but we don't actually get any.
I mean, because my stepfather worked like in clock repair, that was his job. Seeing clock repair people on the page was fun, even if things.
Well, I was going to say the descriptions of clocks that we get are, to my memory, completely separated from any actual clock words.
I mean, yeah, he talks about gears and springs. It's all very like high level, but it's just like if you have a soft spot for people who repair clocks, there are people who repair clocks in this book. I'm grasping at straws here.
Well, I would hate for someone to go, I'm a huge clock nerd. I want to read a book about a clock. And then they're like,
no, don't. If
he spends most of his time trying to catch lightning. Like, there's not actually a lot of clock repair on the page.
If you are a huge clock nerd and want to read a book about clocks, this is probably not actually the book about clocks for you.
No, but if you are charmed by the reference, then yes, go for it. The remainder of this episode contains spoilers. What was going on with Susan?
So, yeah, I really wondered reading this book. And it's a thought that I've had once or twice in the previous Susan books, but not like the entire time like I did here. I really wondered, does Pratchett actually like Susan as a character? And I'm honestly not sure based on this book.
Yeah.
Like, if I recall correctly, in A Life with Footnotes, Rob Wilkins talks about how Pratchett basically didn't have a great time at school and didn't have great experiences with teachers. And that really comes out in Susan. Like, she's described in this book as sensible to a fault. You know, she says, we don't like silliness. She's very logic bound in a way that's often uncomplimentary to her.
She's so concerned with logic and reason that she will ignore the reality in front of her because it doesn't follow logic and reason.
Yeah. And like sometimes that works really well for the plot, but other times you're left thinking, man, for a main character, the author really doesn't like this main character.
Yeah. And she hasn't always been a teacher. She's introduced as a student, and there was some poking fun at her in her early books because she's a silly young girl. I didn't hate it. And in the Hogfather, she was great. Sorry, in Hogfather, she was great because a lot of her sort of no-nonsense aspects are strengths in that book, but it feels like they've sort of just been turned into punchlines here.
Yeah, and it's weird because I don't necessarily think that's Pratchett's intention, because he has a lot of scenes with Susan and her class where like she's, you know, taking them to battlefields or giving them really interesting classroom experiences.
She's actually teaching them, not just babysitting them.
Yeah, she's actually teaching them. And you would think that that would be a really positive like aspect to her character. And it is, but it's also, I don't know, kind of overshadowed by everything else that she thinks and does.
It is interesting, too, that she became a teacher instead of staying a governess. I don't know. Is she just going down the list of jobs it's okay for ladies to have?
I mean, I kind of think that, yes, she is.
Or is she going to be a nurse in the next book? But there's something really charming about this very, I'm going to say severe woman with such a soft spot for kids that doesn't really get talked about. She's never treated like she has a soft spot for kids. It's just, what else is she going to do?
Yeah. And I mean, she is genuinely good with children, probably because she doesn't treat them as children.
Right. She respects them like people. What?
What a concept. But yeah, I don't know, man. I didn't think that he liked her very much in this book, that Pratchett liked her very much in this book.
There's also the mind controlling powers of chocolate that were pretty funny. And I liked that Susan fell to them as much as the auditors did. Also, yeah, by the way, the auditors are the bad guys in this book.
Yes. Yes. And like, yeah, there are some aspects of Susan, like with other things in this book, there are some aspects that I liked. It just overall doesn't work for me. But I did like the chocolate.
I think to your point about kind of clashing with teachers, there's one line that was started off pretty funny about gentlemen's clubs. And then it gets ruined because the conclusion is men invented gentlemen's clubs to avoid the women who bully them their whole lives, from mothers to teachers to wives. And it's like, really?
Yeah.
This was almost very funny. And then you end on that.
Yeah. It just, not my favorite Discworld book.
There are so many good elements in it. It's like the aspects that I enjoyed either didn't get enough screen time or page time.
Well, you read it on your phone, so the screen time.
There you go. Or there was just something off about them, so I couldn't fully enjoy them. And then we got to the parts that I wasn't super into, and I just wasn't into them. That's fine. You don't have to love every page of every book. But like the lows were never that low, but the highs never got that high either. It just ends up being meh.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, I know I said Igor was one of my favorite parts of this book. Lady Legene, the patron of this clock that destroys the time stream or whatever, is actually my favorite.
I don't think we've actually talked about what happens in this book at all.
There's some history amongst, and someone makes a clock.
Yeah, so I would say I don't want to say the main plot because it's not the plot that takes the most page time, but the plot that carries the book is that the auditors are trying to create a clock or have made a clock that stops time, because that way everything will be orderly. They can get all their paperwork done. They won't have to deal with the mess that is humanity.
The auditors are these well, some people in this book call them demons. That's a little dramatic, but they're like lame gods who want everything to be boring and make sense.
They're the auditors of reality. They're basically agents of order versus agents of chaos.
Well, that's a funny sentence in this context, isn't it?
It is a little bit, yes.
So in order to do that, the auditors find Jeremy, who ends up being the son of time herself, and he's the only person capable of making this incredible clock that will destroy time, stop time, break time when it gets made. The auditors nominate one of themselves to take a human form to interface with Jeremy so he doesn't realize what's going on. And she names herself Lady Legene. Because
people have names, so she has to have a name.
And for the first, 136 pages, she's just a slightly sinister rich lady. And Igor does not trust her at all, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, again, we get some great glimpses from Igor's perspective in this book. And I really liked seeing his thought process with regards to Lady Legene, because even though he thinks that she's the one who hired him, he's working for Jeremy, and so he's trying to ensure Jeremy's best interests, which are not necessarily aligned with Lady Legene.
No. So we get the twist that she's actually an auditor in disguise, which that was incredible. I was like, holy shit, I can't believe this. And then we slowly find out that she is enjoying being human. They have their big rule is that you can't eat. That's a human thing. It's dumb to do it. And she tried a small bite of plain toast, and just the experience and the tastes and the flavors was so intense and just so silly and delightful.
I do like the way that this book explores, through the auditors, explores shaping thoughts, like form shaping thoughts, because I think that's something that Pratchett has talked about a little bit in previous books, but it's a very drastic process with the auditors, because they're used to a very bland existence, and humanity is anything but bland.
Messy, you might say.
Very messy.
I've been reading so much Clive Barker. Very messy. I didn't think I'd actually make a crossover reference between these two.
Success, you did it.
So by the end of the book, we have hundreds of auditors that have taken human form because once they realize how complex humanity is, they then want to categorize everything. So, of course, still going about it totally wrong, but that's not the point. They are on Earth in human shape, trying their best.
On the disc.
On the disc. The material plane.
Yes.
In human shape, trying their best to examine humanity without becoming it. And it's discovered that the flavor of chocolate is so mind-blowing that they A, can't resist chocolate at all, and B, basically like deconstruct when they eat it, just like poof into dust.
I really liked that at the very end of the book when Lady Lejean essentially commits suicide. I like that she does it by diving into a big vat of chocolate.
Yeah. And that was also fairly touching as well, because when the auditors shaped like humans die, they like poof, right? They're not really human. They don't really die.
Death doesn't reap them.
Right. But then death does come for Lady Lejean at the end. So she really was human.
Yeah, that was a cute, touching moment.
Her relationship with Susan doesn't trust her, right? Susan's like, you're an auditor. I don't care that you are on my side because you've decided humanity is pretty great. Auditors are still terrible. But then by the end of it, like, I kind of wanted them to be best friends and run off into the sunset together.
I would have loved a Susan and Lady Lejean buddy cop book.
Absolutely.
And obviously we are never going to get that. And we wouldn't have gotten that given the end of the book. But
yeah. And she writes contradictory signage so that the auditors stop and have to figure out how to follow directions. And that's her like defenses against them finding her.
That is a good scene. I think that's one of the best scenes in the book, to be honest.
Absolutely. And then she has this like amazing moment where Susan and Lobsang are cornered and she just stuffs chocolate in the human auditors' mouths, and it like, and that, like, just everything about that was so excellent.
Yeah. She's a highlight of the book for sure.
Yeah. Complex. We get to see her like adjusting and like learning over time. I really liked Lady Lejean.
Yeah. And her journey is very satisfying too, because we see her at the beginning when she is, we'll call her more of an auditor in thought, if not in form. And we see her kind of start to recognize the benefits of humanity, the good points of humanity, and realize that there's so much that the auditors just miss about people. And so it's like, that's really satisfying to see her grow like that.
Yeah, I really liked her. She wasn't in the book enough.
She was not in the book enough.
Maybe that's why the monastery scenes, it was just listen to Luce talk about the nature of time. And I was like, but I could be reading about Lady Lejean or Susan right now. Or Igor.
I don't know. I've never been as much of a Susan fan as you. I would rather read about Luce than Susan, particularly in this book.
Well, in this book, yeah, I agree.
Given what we've talked about Susan.
So we mentioned Jeremy and Lobsang. They are both the son of time. They are not twins. They are the same kid born twice.
Yes.
I thought that was fun. Oh, and we get a great cameo from Nanny. Nanny has a cameo.
Nanny has a cameo, yes. Nanny has a very good cameo. But there is some serious kind of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff going on.
And when it's actually happening, I was really interested. I just wasn't interested in hearing them talk about it.
Yeah, but so we have Jeremy and Lobsang, and Jeremy is the one who was dropped off at the Clockmakers Guild as a baby. Lobsang was dropped off at the Thieves Guild as a baby. They kind of lead these two separate lives growing up. And Lobsang, I think, is pretty well adjusted, more or less. Jeremy is not at all. When I was reading his introduction, he read as very autistic to me. Like, he doesn't understand social cues. He hyper focuses on things. He has deep and abiding interests, kind of to the exclusion of everything else. But I don't think that Pratchett handles Jeremy as an autistic character very well. I mean, I don't necessarily think that was what he was going for, but I don't know, I didn't like it. Specifically the way that Pratchett deals with Jeremy.
That's so what upset me was the way the other characters handled Jeremy. Like the Clockmaker Guild Master, is that the Clockmaker Guild, the Clocksmith Guild Master? Whatever, it's that guy.
The Watchmakers Guild or whatever it was, yeah.
Yeah. Of making sure he had his medicine, otherwise, oh no. Like that all felt very gross. But I feel like the text didn't deal with Jeremy poorly. It was the other characters.
I don't know. Maybe you're right, but I also don't think that the text deals with Jeremy well. And that was...
I'm not going to hold this book up as an example of a great neurodivergent character. Yeah,
no,
true.
No. But I think that the kind of neutrality of the text plus the way that the characters treat Jeremy and were not necessarily given any indication that Pratchett thinks that that's a bad way of treating him.
Well, I thought so. Because Igor doesn't treat him that way, and obviously Igor's the best.
But Igor still kind of side-eyes him for not taking his medicine and things like that. And the way that he? Yeah.
Okay.
And the way that he insists that he's sane, certifiably sane.
Yeah.
Like it's just
the guild master was so obviously at fault, and maybe that's just me editorializing the text.
I think that's being a little generous with the text. I mean, you're not wrong, but I don't think that the text is particularly great either.
I'm trying to think if his neurodivergence ever felt like a punchline.
It kind of does, though.
Well,
to me,
the moment that I can remember is when Igor notices that he gets cute when he knows Lady Legine is coming over because he's getting a crush on her. But that doesn't feel like a neurodivergent thing. That's just...
No. I thought that I thought was cute.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, the way that only he can create this clock, which is a bad thing, because this clock is a bad thing, I don't know. It didn't work for me.
Okay, I've come around. The fact that like his life passion is something that will destroy the world.
Yeah. It's just not great.
Yeah. His talent isn't treated like a talent. It's treated like a crisis.
Yeah.
And that's too bad.
Yeah, like he's not celebrated for being talented, either in the text or by the people around him, except for by the people who want to use him to end the world.
Which could have been a comment on people getting taken advantage of.
Could have, but
I don't think it really reads. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, that's something that I didn't pick up on. I didn't notice when I first read this book at 16 or whatever, but it definitely did bother me this time.
I feel like the handling of the vaguely Asian monastery was more bad, or at least more obviously, like, poorly done. My brain didn't even make it to this part because I was so hung up on that.
I would say that they were about equally bad.
Okay.
In my view.
So the book ends with Lobsang and Jeremy becoming one entity.
And then having a one-night stand with Susan?
That's what I didn't read that as a one-night stand. I was about to say I thought it was cute that the book kind of hints that they might get together later.
Well, okay. I think if we had had another book, maybe it would have been a longer thing.
So like the reason why Susan gets wrapped up in this is because she has always felt like an outcast. And then she finds out that there's another weird anthropomorphic personification descendant out there in the world. So she wants to find him.
That's how Death hooks her, yeah. But she gets wrapped up in it because Death figures out what the auditors are up to, but he can't interfere because of the rules.
Right.
So he needs Susan to do it for him.
Right. And he uses the hook of there's someone else like you.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like they had chemistry, but I feel like there was enough breadcrumbs in the book of her being fascinated by him, if not interested in him.
He's the only one there and available for her.
That too.
Because everyone else is just going to die because she thinks she's immortal and possibly is immortal.
I don't know. It was cute because she thinks she's never going to see him again. And then she sneaks to the supply closet to eat chocolate and he shows up.
I mean, that was cute. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really sweet. And it ends like, turns out there is such a thing as a perfect moment or something very cheesy. I loved it.
I think, you know what it is? The reason why I thought it was a one-night stand is because of that comment about perfect moments. Like, it being a finite thing.
I think it was referring to her realizing that she's not never going to see him again.
You're probably right.
There were a lot of double negatives in that sentence. I think it came across.
I knew what you meant. And you're probably right. That probably is the intention.
I don't think Susan's going to get it on in a supply closet next to a room full of kindergartners. I hope not.
It seems a little illogical for someone who is sensible to a fault.
Yes. How old were Jeremy and Lobsang supposed to be?
16, maybe? 17?
They're a little too young for he.
But I think Susan is only like 20.
Okay, that's a good point. That's still a little weird.
Yes, I don't disagree.
I guess when you're immortal, it doesn't count.
Yeah. But also, like, I mean, a 3-year age difference is not that bad.
Not eventually, but a high school sophomore and a college sophomore, that's weird.
In the real world, yes, I agree.
I guess at one point, Susan makes a comment like, I figured it out when I was younger than you. That made me go, wait, what does that mean? How old is he? And it's never like really explained.
No, but I don't think, I mean, he is younger than Susan, but I don't think he's decades younger than Susan.
No. He could be 18 and she could be 20.
Like, I thought it was, max 4 years.
Yeah. Anyway, it was unspecified enough to give me pause. How's that?
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
We also have a Patreon where you can support us, find our show notes, and some other nonsense, like Shoot, Screw, or Marry.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.